Have you seen Chuck Norris lately? He's still kicking butt and staying active well into his 80s. What's even more shocking is he looks more jacked than ever and seems to have more energy than guys half his age. And it's all thanks to Morning Kick, a revolutionary new daily drink from Roundhouse Provisions that combines ultra-potent greens like spirulina and kale with probiotics, prebiotics, collagen, and even ashwagandha. Just mix with water, stir, and enjoy. Unlike other green drinks out there, this one tastes exactly like strawberry lemonade and has hundreds of 5-star reviews. Go to roundhouseprovisions.com/save44 for up to 44% off your regular priced order. Plus, every purchase is backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if you want to experience smoother digestion, a boost of energy, and just an overall healthier body, then go to roundhouseprovisions.com/save44 today. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Results can vary.
The following podcast may contain discussions supported by science that may be considered dangerous to some listeners and conspiracy theorists. Discretion is advised.
The 3 Down Greencast is brought to you by the Pile of Bones Brewing Company. Home delivery available in Regina at sassbeerdelivery.ca. Welcome to the 3 Down Greencast. You are listening to the internet's only live from the bathroom podcast. I am
I knew you were going there.
Joel Gasson with John Fraser as usual. And that's a little bit of an inside joke that yeah, we can get into it a bit.
Yep.
I debated before we started recording here whether I should go with that or ask you what the open should be. But nothing's really stood out as being too ridiculously dumb this week that I can remember, at least. That we had to talk about until, I believe this morning, you shared a post on Facebook because of your weekly appearance on CTV Morning Live in Saskatoon to discuss all things CFL and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And the screenshot and your background was different because, of course, as we talked about on our fine program last week, your computer is basically dead, RIP.
Yep.
And so you are no longer in your office in the basement. But there was some question as to where you were now recording because what was behind you looked a lot like a shower curtain.
I didn't even think of that. Okay, so to set the record straight, I was recording in Maya's room. It was this morning. Normally, we're supposed to record these at 7:45, so it's a little bit. Everybody's still kind of sleeping around 7:45. I can get up. I can come down to the office. I can record it. I've got the office set up. I got to show off my fantasy football trophies, right? But like last minute, 8:20, I'm like, hey, Connor's still sleeping, so I can't use my bedroom. He'd fallen asleep there. I can't use the boys' rooms because, there's Sonic the Hedgehog posters everywhere. I'm like, I'll just go into Maya's room. It's got the comfy recliner. This will work well. I can prop my phone up on the bookshelf. And I didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, oh, wow, that went well. That worked in a pinch. Internet connection was strong. Had a good time talking with my friend Blair. And yes, watch for you truly every week. And then I see the screenshot. And I shared the screenshot to Facebook. And then you point out how much it looks like I'm in the bathroom, which would be surprisingly on brand for me. Because Maya's changing table is off to my right, and it's white. And then, yes, the blackout curtains in that room do kind of look like shower curtains, and I kind of put it all together and went, it does kind of look like I was taking a poop, right? I was a little sweaty and shiny from, running around, getting the kids ready. Maya's room is typically warmer than the rest of the rooms in the house. She was downstairs with Lacey. It was the perfect storm that instead of my pre-planned background that makes me look like I'm an insider with 2 R's, it looked like I was taking a poop and talking to Blair on CTV. So that is a memorable moment, which also I'm glad that the segment ended when it did, because no more than about 3 minutes later, as I'm just getting everything ready to go, putting my phone in my pocket, Connor wakes up and the first thing he looks at me is, "Daddy, I have to poop," which knowing Connor, he would have said regardless. So I promise our IT guy at work says maybe episode 2, I won't look like I'm taking a dump. I will instead look like I'm in my relatively well-decorated office.
I mean, unless you have the lettuce the night before, then all bets are off.
Okay, for the record, I have even started, now that we have a consistent record night,
Yeah.
I even make sure
Is there a no Subway on Sunday rules now? Is that like a thing?
I don't have to worry about, but it's the lunch. There's a lot of days that, like, let's face it, Monday's the kind of day you might not have many leftovers left in the fridge. I love spicy food.
I mean, for the purposes of our show, if you're in the bathroom, no one would really know. I'm thinking more of your CTV Morning Live appearances, quite frankly.
Right. No. That's a brilliant point. Yeah, so definitely no lettuce. Definitely no Subway on Sundays. Probably no KFC either. Mary Brown's is weirdly safe. But, yeah, does that count as a lettuce update?
Maybe. Kind of. Sort of. I don't know. We have this great new sound bit that your buddy Graham made for us, and we haven't been able to use it yet because, I mean, I don't want to force it. I want it to, kind of come naturally, like after you eat some Subway lettuce.
I don't think there's anything natural about that. It's funny, both calling you your nickname and saying there's nothing natural about that gas could be taken many different ways, all because apparently my house looks like a funky bathroom.
Yeah.
You could tell. I thought to myself as I said that, I'm like, Joel's gonna try to transition out of funky bathroom, and this is the first time I've ever stumped you.
No, I wasn't really thinking of transitioning just yet. I don't really know where I was going with it.
Where can you go when your co-host talks about his funky bathrooms?
I don't know. I mean, your bathroom downstairs is kind of funky, so I mean.
Yeah, with the 2 light switches, and at least it has a ceiling and a door now, though.
Door's an important factor in a bathroom, yeah.
Oh yeah. Until we got the trim put up, though, like it was just like you never saw it when it was just, you don't have the trim piece, and you've got that narrow slit between like the frame of the door and the rest of the wall where somebody comes downstairs, they're gonna know what you're doing.
So you basically had a bathroom stall before.
Essentially, yes. So it's a good thing that you didn't make it up to visit before that. For you and I having the bromance that we do, we're very close. But I don't know if I could look at you the same or talk to you the same if I ever like saw your poop face. It's all I'd be able to think about, right?
Yeah.
Into a man's soul at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, this is officially the most off the rails we've ever gone in 4 years of this thing.
Yeah, it's at least number 2 all time.
I just about spit out my beer. I'm glad I wasn't drinking vodka. Oh, my nose would hurt so bad if I did that. Oh God.
We do have some football to talk about this week.
We're just so used to not talking about football that this is where we go now.
Yeah, it pretty much is. I'm still actually kind of amazed. Just to kind of go back a bit, I guess, from the top, just off the open, that I'm still battling a bit of a cold, and I didn't know if I was going to be able to get through the welcome without coughing or something, but
yeah, that was a good welcome too.
I did it. I was quite surprised. But yeah,
too.
I guess maybe a bit of a surprise for some people the way the Riders played this week.
There it is.
They beat down the Hamilton Ticats at the end of the day. Took a little while to get there, so we will talk about that game a little bit, kind of what we liked, maybe what we didn't like, and we'll also talk about who was and wasn't there at that game, and maybe some of the reasons why behind that, and of course, we would be remiss if we didn't mention that our boy, Sergio.
Kicker of the league, 3 for 3.
Went 3 for 3 in his Edmonton Elks debut, and based on what we saw out of Edmonton, I think there's a pretty good chance that at least after week 1 that Sergio is the clubhouse leader for the team's MVP vote or MOP vote during the regular season.
Which I feel like would finally right the wrongs of last year's Grey Cup. But then it also makes me wonder, if things continue to suck in Winnipeg, do we get Sergio in Bomber? Like, I'm way ahead of myself here. But, like, is that a trade deadline move? Do we get the third run of Sergio in Winnipeg?
I would be surprised. If he was a free agent, maybe, but with him signed for Edmonton for the year and they probably not having much else, he might be kind of their guy for the year, I would think.
Right, that's fair, but with how bad they've looked, it's kind of got some, like, I don't know. I look at Edmonton, and if I'm a CFL team, if I'm any CFL team, am I heading to the playoffs? I am getting last year's Grey Cup MOP on my roster, or should have been last year's Grey Cup MOP, because let's face it, they don't win that game without him.
No, they don't. And most people, even one Dustin Nilsson, has pretty much accepted that. So,
which when a mainstream media guy who does play-by-play for the league comes on board that train, I'm all for it.
Absolutely. Of course, other trains we are certainly, for around here is beer. And
yes.
So before we get into everything out of that really smooth transition, what is in the glass this week, John, for the Pile of Bones Brewing Company?
I'm not going to discuss the beer I have in my glass, for it's been a busy week. It's industrial and crappy. But what I will discuss, and you know what happens when I buy this product, I've got provincial vodka.
Yes.
So it's going to go down real smooth. I could get spicy as this episode goes on. So
you could. Wow. That would be a first.
I'm normally so calm and rational. Same thing, similar Lucky Bastard, locally made vodka. My only criticism of it, and I've had this conversation with you, it's too smooth.
This product is too good, goddammit.
Well, that's it. Like, it's almost like, I call me weird, but like, I'm at an age now, and I feel like it just happens when you turn 30 or become a dad, where I like the taste of booze. I like tasting my whiskeys, my scotch, my vodkas. I like the taste of it, right? So I'm not a complete maniac. I'm not everybody on every TV show drinking warm booze out of a glass conveniently in somebody's office. I like, as I've discussed, a little lemon, some water, a couple shots of vodka on ice. That's my go-to. Problem is, when you do that with provincial, you don't taste it. Next thing you know, you drank a significant amount, and it's a work night. And I'm hoping my boss, as I say that, I'm hoping my boss man doesn't listen to me. See, I'm off tomorrow for a golf tournament, but it is dangerously smooth, fresh, now actually lower priced than most over at Sobeys Liquor. So this is, to me, is the perfect one for making cocktails, for, you like a Caesar, you don't want that vodka-y punch in the mouth. You can put the 2 shots, which, by the way, Caesar's supposed to be made with 2 shots. Put that in there without getting punched in the face. It's smooth. It's local. I love it. It's cheap at Sobeys Liquor. So, Budmo.
For me, also cheap, at least this week at Sobeys Liquor, is the Blackbridge mixer pack. It's only on for $18.99 for 8 beers. So I got the Blackbridge Wheat Burst, which is, of course, sort of the base where they've had the pineapple wheat burst and some other versions of it come out over the years. It's just kind of, nice, refreshing, a little bitter, but not super bitter, but just overall, kind of a little bit of a bite to it, but not overly bitey, but still just delicious to put down your face hole, as you like to say.
That is one that's, again, it's like, I love that one because that's kind of the beer that you give to people that want to start exploring craft and want to know what something's like, so it's just not a hot blast in their face, but has some of those tastes. I am looking forward, if I had time tonight, I was going to go get the latest Blackbridge dad joke, The Stakes Are High. You sent that to me, and
yeah, it's probably not quite on store shelves yet, but other unless you happen to be in Swift Current at the brewery, but I think it'll be probably later this week if you're listening on Tuesday or Wednesday when we release this late Monday night. Yeah, that's probably where you'll find it, yeah.
Which I got to tease on CTV, so maybe there are people waiting with eager anticipation for us to finish recording this.
Potentially, but probably not.
Other than, like my mom and Dave.
Yeah. And apparently a guy I used to work with who has moved on to a different store within the company. Because a few people, there are a few people we both found out during our sort of unplanned hiatus of a couple weeks that were asking where the hell we were, so...
Yeah, which is oh god, and this is the worst. I always feel so bad about this because I'm genuinely, absolutely flattered, and I love it when people come up and say they love what we do because again, 99% of my motivation for doing this is just to have an excuse to kind of get a warm buzz on a Monday night in my basement and hang out with you. But I'm gonna get the name wrong, so I'm not even gonna try. Had a fan come up in the lineup at kid drop off at school the other day. Said hello, shook my hand. Remind me of your name next time I see you at the kid drop off line. You drove a black Dodge Caravan. You were a super nice guy. We chatted for a bit in the rain. Thank you so much for coming up and saying hello. I love it. And I feel terrible, but I'm like honestly terrible with names. Like there's a reason that even doing my job that, you know, you have to talk to people. Yeah. I keep their name on a piece of paper in front of me and on the computer screen. I'm that bad with names. So don't take it personally. I just suck.
True words have never been spoken. John Fraser.
Now I got vodka in my nose. I just suck was the correct term, Joel Gasson.
Okay, sorry, I took you out of context.
Oh shit.
There was some people, I guess, chatting in the rain after the game on Saturday, as it rained a little bit as I was leaving the stadium,
and the Rider defense didn't suck.
No, they did not. They were far from suck. They were probably the opposite of suck in every single way, except for the one sort of boom bust Nick Marshall play that we see per game usually.
That's what you're expecting, though.
Yeah, and I mean, you're going to give up a touchdown at some point. It's the CFL, right? So
right,
that happens. The important thing is the offense rebounded and they figured it out. But yeah, I wrote about it in the piece on 3downnation.com. The good, the bad, and the dumb, back for another year, of course. Yes. And because I was like, okay, I was sitting there, I'm like, yeah, the defense was played lights out. Maybe one of the best performances we've seen from a Jason Shivers defense since he took over for Chris Jones as defensive coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, they were so good that I'm just not even really going to write about it. Because quite frankly, y'all know it. Like
it's true.
Like everyone watching that game was like, yeah, the defense was good. I don't need to tell you that the defense was good after watching that football game. Like that was just a clinical performance, quite frankly, at the end of the day.
Surgical, clinical, and I have a feeling this will probably be the last year that we see Jason Shivers here, because there's no way he can't be. You have to be talking about him as a head coach. Like you have to be. Like I know that was all the talk when Jason Moss came over here, and some of his play calling's been meh, but like Shivers has to be a head coach candidate because yet again it was, like you said, clinical. It was almost, you know they're good when you're watching. And I was watching on the PVR. I was at one of my very good friends' weddings. Congratulations, Charles and Ariel, on Saturday night. So with $36 of Burger King that I was putting into my face hole after the wedding, not that the food wasn't great, I was just drunk. I was watching the game and just like, you hit a point that you just knew they were going to do. You knew a forced fumble was coming. You knew a sack was coming. You knew that they were just going to make a big play. And wow, look, I mean, we knew this defense was going to be championship caliber good. And in game one, and this is not a Hamilton team that's bad. We're not talking that they were playing the Elks, who we kind of think will be bad. I've just reverse Fraser curse them, I'm sure.
No, I don't know if even they could overcome the Fraser curse.
That's impressive. That's actually a talent. This is a team that was in the Grey Cup last year. This was a team that, if it wasn't for Sergio, wins the Grey Cup last year.
Mm-hmm.
Just manhandled, just like destroyed, dominated, like every possible word you could come up with. It was so impressive. And for the defense to be simultaneously, like as we all know what Nick Marshall is, for the defense to not only come up with big plays, explosive plays, turnovers, create those things, but also just be generally solid. Like you see a lot of Ds that are, really boom or bust. This Rider D is not that. And holy crap, if they can keep that up, if they can even keep 85% of that up, I don't know how they're not hosting a game, how they're not hosting a playoff game. Like, that was just ridiculous how good they were.
Yeah, and I mean, I think to continue to expect that sort of production all year is probably unrealistic, obviously.
Right.
Given sort of a regression to the mean at some point, and they're going to have the odd off night or anything like that. And I mean, that's going to happen, and that's fine. But I think we've talked about this before, and to me, what remains the most impressive thing about what they've been able to do on defense under sort of the Jeremy O'Day, Craig Dickinson, Jason Shivers era of defense is it's very plug and play, right? Like we look at Ed Gainey and Lucius Purifoy aren't back. The defensive line names are always changing. Like Micah Johnson's not here this year. Garrett Marino's kind of jumped in there, and there's some other names. Pete Robertson, like these guys that kind of just find the next one. They keep plugging the hole with someone, and it just keeps working. And so then it's like, so the question becomes, and we obviously don't know the answer to this yet, is it Jason Shivers' system and the way it works, or is this group just good at finding defensive players that either A, are that good, or B, fit the system well, or is it some kind of combination of all three, which maybe is the correct answer in this situation?
I would agree with you. I think the Jeremy O'Day era has been very good. I'm talking about the time. I know he was technically in the front office when Chris Jones was here, but let's face it, that was the Chris Jones show, right?
He had a very different role within the front office at the time, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, here's a guy that took over the team, has done nothing but stock Canadian depth. As you mentioned, like the American scouts are fantastic finding these guys that fit the system. So I would be interested to see one without the other. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't want to see one without the other. I think it's great for the Rough Riders, but yeah, it's a strong front office that knows what they're doing. You've got a guy that I'm surprised. I think the first vacancy you see this off season, Shivers' name has to be attached to it. If it's not, something has gone horribly wrong. But yeah, you're right. They find guys out of nowhere, and I know it's a bit of a running joke, amongst CFL circles that like D linemen and American wide receivers are almost a dime a dozen, but they're still finding guys that are just at another level. Like that, like you mentioned, Robertson, that game from him. Mm-hmm. 2 sacks, a forced fumble, like in one game. Like that's some guys do that in a season. So I think the organization top down is very good. I don't want to see either guy leave, but yeah, something is going very right because this is kind of a continuation of what we saw last year. Defense was good last year. They have potential to be great this year. And I know we're kind of gushing over one game, but like I said, they even give an 80%, 85% performance like this the rest of the year. Unless the offense suddenly is just crap. For stretches last year, Saskatchewan's a tough team to beat. They're looking tough.
Yeah, they are. And, I mean, you brought up the offense, and I think that's sort of where the question for this team, I'm not going to say lingers a little bit. There was certainly, I think, reason for pause, right? The way that game started. It took about 3 quarters for the offense to sort of find its groove from whereas, and maybe that's part of just sort of preseason rust after, Cody Fajardo played about a half of a game through it the first bit, and, maybe the entire first unit weren't together the entire time and all that sort of thing. So maybe it took some time to get there. But I mean, they got there, and I think through 3 quarters, a lot of us in the press box were like, oh boy, here we go again. It's a lot of the same sort of, short throws, uninspired play calling, and, the run game has, regressed a little bit already, and where is this headed? And all of a sudden, it opened up a bit, and, yes, Cody Fajardo hit, Shaq Evans with, I believe, a 41-yard pass at one point, and I joked to the Green Zone's Jamie Nye, I was like, because I think at that point, at the half, Cody Fajardo's longest pass through the air was 5 yards. So not including the yak, so just when the ball was caught was 5 yards deep. And then he hit Shaq for that 41-yarder. I'm like, wow, he just 8 times his longest throw of the day. So clearly that opened up a little bit, but I think really what the actual key was, and maybe if the long ball's kind of going to be, off and on, and, maybe not as reliable still for Cody as it was in 2019, what really opened up sort of the entire, I think, game for him was, he hit Duke Williams and he started finding guys, maybe not necessarily 40, 50 yards down the field, but he was hitting those, 15, 20, 25 yarders in the middle of the field. And that was starting to give them just enough space to kind of start doing what they need to do. And I think that was really what kind of got the offense rolling.
Well, absolutely. And I think that's the Tom Brady, the New England Patriots offense for all those years under Bill Belichick. You look at what Brady and the Pats would do, a lot of their deep-ish stuff, their medium stuff was never to the outside. It was always down the middle because the logic behind that, the ball doesn't have to travel as far, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's out of Brady's hand, quicker into a receiver's hand. The defense has less time to react. So it was nice to see them just start to do that. But yeah, when you see like a bad lacrosse score for the first half of that game compared to like kind of what we were expecting, what we were hoping to see, it just like I thought the same thing. Like I was following along on Twitter, I was watching and seeing that low score, seeing lots of criticism, seeing lots of, calling a 5-yard out on a 2nd and 7, seeing a lot of that again. I was thinking, oh boy, here we go. Like we're going to waste this epic performance by this defense by just not being good enough. So,
and there is a part of me that wonders if maybe it took them a little longer to get to it than they wanted to, but there is a part of me if maybe Jason Maas kind of used that to his advantage for a bit, kind of trying to lull Hamilton into that traffic and saying, okay, they're going to play this game again, and all of a sudden he opened it up, right? Maybe that was part of the game plan.
Right, perhaps, but I still think that, and you see it so often where your defense makes a big play, and then you draw something up for your offense the very next play, a deep ball, some sort of gadget play, get it into your hands of one of your playmakers and really start to take over the game momentum-wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope that's what they were doing because that play calling that first half was atrocious.
Yeah.
It was just bad. Like, everything Jason Maas was brought in to do, none of it was working. And again, it comes down to, is this the OC or is this the parts he's been handed? One thing I did like, even when, and maybe Cody was still a little gun shy. He didn't play in the preseason basically. And last year he had an offensive line that was really not good. And you and I discussed how that can ruin a quarterback. And maybe that was part of it. Maybe he was rushing it. Maybe he was taking the safe thing. But it's like when he saw that O-line and had some more faith in them, he had the trust to stand in there for an extra half second and complete those deep balls. And again, by having your deeper routes go down the middle, that's even less time that Cody needs to complete those. So I thought the offensive line was better. They certainly weren't as bad as last year. It seems like they were giving Cody that extra half second. I would have liked to see the running backs maybe do something more because you're not going to win a lot of games going 9 for 14 with, carries and yards. Like, and again, that comes down to the line, but still, I thought I was worried. And by the second half, I was less worried. I'm still not willing to say that's a championship caliber offense. I'm still very concerned, but for game 1, they did some things that looked like they weren't going to be as terrible as last year.
Yeah, it's all about how you finish, not how you start, right? So there's, I think offensively, there is, reasons for optimism. There's reasons to believe that there is something to build on. And it's funny that we talk about play calling because I think, and I wrote it on the piece on 3downnation.com, I think sort of the turning point of the game, the highlight of the game that kind of put things in motion for the Riders was actually something that wasn't really a great play call, and was at least, at the very least, not well executed, which was the third down gamble at the start of the fourth quarter where Cody Fajardo essentially had to throw it away because it just didn't materialize the way they had hoped. But what that really did was that I think that galvanized the team. Because really what happened was sort of the old story is, a lot of old school football guys like, you punt there and trust your defense. No, you go for it there because you trust your defense.
Exactly.
And in that spot,
times a million, yes.
And in that spot, Hamilton hadn't done really anything on offense all game to that point. And so, why wouldn't you trust your defense and go for it in that situation? They did. It didn't work out in the moment, but then it did, I believe, eventually win them the game because that defense came out and just ruined Hamilton's day with, the knockdown pass and then the fumble recovery. And then they went back and got Brett Lauder's 5th field goal of the game, which ended up being sort of the game-winning score at that time. And from that point on, everything to me the Riders had just kind of kept building and building and building, while Hamilton kind of slowly slid away after both teams are kind of even through the first 3 quarters.
Right. Second best kicker in the league, Brett Lauder. And I say this as a Brett Lauder guy, right? You're absolutely right, Joel. You and I were texting before I left for said wedding. I was watching it, and the Riders in the first quarter had another situation, 3rd and 2 from midfield, where as soon as Craig Dickinson made it clear he wasn't going for it, I think I just texted, and this was harsh, but I texted that I'm like, that's a coward move. You're at home. It's a season opener. You got to get yard and a half from midfield with that kind of defense. Like, why aren't you going for it? So you're absolutely right. That shows the confidence you have in the defense. And I like the play call. The execution was not there, but the play call was. Going for it there, 3rd and 2, and calling a deep ball, love it. I just love that because of all the things, if you're lining up for a 3rd and 2, nobody's thinking deep shot here, especially with Cody Fajardo and the way that the Riders played last year. Unfortunately, there's a breakdown in protection, and they got to Cody, who smartly chucked it away. But I love that play call. I did. I thought that would have been a dagger moment. Go for it in 3rd and 2 from midfield and go deep. It didn't work out, but like you said, that shows the confidence that Craig Dickinson has in that defensive unit, as he should. And I'd love to see him do that a lot more time because you're right. It fired up the team and specifically fired up that defense, knowing that they had the ability to just go out and do their thing and continue doing their thing.
Yeah, and they definitely, and as we said, they did their thing, and they basically, the team carried sort of the momentum of that moment the rest of the game. I think the fans kind of picked up on the momentum of that moment as well, at least the ones who were there.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into this a bit. It's obviously been a conversation on, online on Twitter for the last couple of days. Twitter, of course, isn't real life. We all understand that, but this is still,
as you know,
this is still a thing that people are talking about. I think across the board, across the CFL to a certain degree, for various reasons. Positive, BC getting 34,000+ is, certainly worthy of discussion as well. But before we get into everything about that, I just want to make one thing abundantly clear. Even though I do not pay for my ticket, and apparently that sometimes does not entitle me to certain opinions, I will say that any talk about attendance in any sport is not a reflection of the fan base, but organizations and decisions made by them and their leagues, not the fans who decide not to go. Let's make that perfectly clear.
I agree with you, right?
I never judge a fan for whatever reason that they decide that they don't want to spend their money. That is their prerogative. It is up to the organizations and the leagues to make you want to spend your money to go.
Well, and that's why I hate when people throw the term blackout around.
Mm-hmm.
Blackout's the dumbest thing you could ever do.
Oh, in this day and age, absolutely. Like, if you blacked out games again, that would just be the absolute death blow to this league.
It absolutely would be. I mean, you look at the growth, again, me, lacrosse guy, you look at even the growth that the casual fan has had with the NLL now that it's just on TSN. You can just randomly on a weekend watch an NLL game and see it and then go, to the game in your home market or whatever, right? Everybody that calls for a blackout, like, come on, give your head a shake. Like, I get it. It is easier now than ever to sit on your couch, watch the game in 4K in surround sound with just ridiculous quality and take it in that way. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Something about being there. And that's cliche as fuck. I'm sorry. I know it is, but I'm a believer in that. I always have been. Like, I think it's cool to be there. And I'm with you. I will never, ever, ever point my nose down at somebody that can't go to the game. Because let's face it, Cass.
Mm-hmm.
It's money.
Yeah.
It's money and time is why you can't go to the game. Whether you're busy with work, whether you're busy with your family. Like, if I had millions of dollars, I'd get every game. I'd take my personal jet down, fly down there with the kids, sit, 55-yard line, 3 rows up. If money and time weren't an issue, I'd be at every game, and I'm certain that everybody that listens to this podcast feels that way. If money and time weren't an issue, you'd probably be there.
Mm-hmm.
Support your team, have a great time, but it is, and that's why I'm not going to sit there, especially, in my position, never mind if I was, on a couch in Florida, and ever judge anybody for not going before, like you said, before we get into this debate or talk about this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't go, I don't care. That doesn't make you less of a fan. If you don't have a single piece of Rider apparel, if you don't have a hat, a T-shirt, a dirty sock, the Riders logo on it, shit, you're as big of a fan as anybody else. Hell, I'm a Bomber fan, and you're obviously a bigger Rider fan than I am, even without your gear. So, yeah, I did. I'm glad that you brought that up because I did want to say that before we get into this because again, nothing I'm saying here is judging anybody, but you're right. It's the organization's job to bring people in the door.
Yeah. So on Twitter today, the leader post Rob Vanstone, he talked with Riders president and CEO Craig Reynolds, who divulged to him there was about 4,000 no-shows, most of which were rural. So clearly, I think it's safe to say one major issue here is, of course, the price of gas, which is something that is completely out of control of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, the province of Saskatchewan, and Justin Trudeau. So...
Yes, thank you for saying the third part.
So naturally, completely understandable there when all of a sudden, it's doubled essentially the cost of filling your gas tank over a year ago. That's a conversation and that's something that has to be had. I mean, I have a Civic and it now costs me $80 to fill a freaking Civic. I mean, for those people with those massive trucks, number one, sorry you made your decision, but two, okay, yeah, I understand and kind of feel you a little bit when it's now probably like $300 to fill your tank. And then you're going to just use it to drive to a football game. Yeah, I can understand that's maybe not the best use of your investment in that case.
Well, that's it, especially like for it to be rural customers that, truck in a city is a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Rural, you probably need it for something. So, as you said, like that's tough. I will never claim to be a farming expert. But I was having a conversation with somebody inside the Riders organization myself this week, and they mentioned it's a busy time for seeding, I believe.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to sound
but I mean, there's a game at this time every year, and I mean, it usually does a little better than that. At least all 28,000 usually show up.
Right, and as you mentioned, the price of gas, the realities.
Yeah,
of
I would argue, in the defense of a lot of fans that. I would say in the CFL, at least, there is no fan base that is affected more than of the, sort of skyrocketing gas prices than the Saskatchewan Roughriders when you consider half the season ticket base is said to be from outside of Regina. Every other fan base, season ticket base is probably in their city, and all those cities have at least decent to good public transit to get to the game without having to drive.
Right, and you're bang on with that, Joel. So it was interesting finding out that was a large part of the no-show data. I mean, at the end of the day, you still had New Mosaic holds 33, correct?
Yeah. So that means there's about 24 and change actually there.
So you still had 28 paid. You still had 28,000 people that put their dough on the line, and again couldn't make it because of unexpected circumstances, rising gas prices, all that kind of stuff. So. I can understand that, but I think, and the point I made this, and can we call her a friend of the program if we've never spoken to her?
I think we've brought Krista up a few times. Like, there's definitely we are definitely online friends of the show at least.
Exactly. So I brought it up, and Krista brought it up to a much more researched point than I did. That for me, okay, I got the two boys. And
this is more of like a broader, bigger picture discussion about attendance, in the grand scheme and sort of where the organization is going and where sort of the league is going in general. Right. Not about the one specific game.
No, exactly. Yeah, I will never sit down and say, "Oh, nobody came to this one certain game for X reason," call the crisis mode. But I think what you're starting to see build here that the Riders aren't maybe doing as well as other teams is getting the family in the door, right? So I just, out of my own curiosity, I saw the empty seats. Max is 6 going on 7, Connor 3 going on 4. They're starting to develop a love of things that their dad finds cool, and one of those is football, and I want to pass it on to them, right? So my mindset, and tell me if I'm wrong, is I want them to have my love of football. And to do that, they need to have the best experience they can. And I think part of that is sitting in a good seat. I think in today's day and age of 4K TVs and couches and replays where, Max can have his Blizzard and his chips and just watch the game, you need to take him, someplace where it's going to be different. It's going to be different. He gets to see the speed, the athleticism of these guys, in the lower bowl. And maybe I have spoiled my children, but the fact is I've been able to take them to Blades games for cheap. Husky games for cheap. Even the Rush have family pricing. And it was worrisome to me when, for poops and giggles, on Ticketmaster and found that for me to take my two boys, and Lacey, of course, to a football game, it would be almost $500. The youth ticket prices were about 95% of the adult ticket prices for the section I was looking at. Now, again, guy like me, I drive a hybrid RAV4 and a hybrid Sienna. My gas to Regina and back's probably $100. Okay, now all of a sudden you're probably looking at food, merchandise, the whole thing, plus lost time at work. Like, it's an easy $700 touch, right? And to me, you need to get the families there. When Krista does a great job on her Twitter feed of breaking down that basically every single team in the CFL has a family or youth deal. The one I will always compare it to is the Blue Bombers. Curiosity went on and found a near identical seat in Winnipeg, a team with a new stadium, a team that's been very successful lately. My kids would be $22 a ticket. My own ticket would be $100. I don't care. I'll pay for my own ticket, but that's the way it should be. And the tweet sparked a text from somebody I know in the rider organization. And we had a really good conversation about it. I understand it's not as simple as, because let's face it, you can't just, if you slash ticket prices across the board right now, you're going to have a lot of angry people. Paid full price for those tickets. Maybe you don't make the same money. You've got math. They've got all sorts of numbers and data to say whether something is viable to do or not. But it was great to hear this is on their radar. That us families that want the riders to do something to make it more accessible to take our kids to a game. That if I want to pay $150 for a ticket, I can do that. But, I might have to leave halfway through because the boys want to go home, right? So it's on the radar. It's far more complex than just a massive ticket gouge. I understand that, but I do think that the team needs to make it, and if you can't do it in season, the team needs to make it a priority to get the families on board, because who was that? It was Peter Mills on Twitter said, "Oh, the energy is the best when it's just full of 18 and 30-year-olds in here." Okay, that's great. Make an 18 or 30-year-old want to go to that game. You're not going to do it when they're 18. I'm sorry, you're not. You're going to do it when they're 6, 7. When you take into a game, they remember that experience, and the team, I'm glad it's on their radar, but the team absolutely needs to do a better job of finding a way to get families and young fans in the building to build that continued generation.
Yeah, and I mean, certainly we all understand it's a complicated situation, and it's not, and I don't expect much to change in season at this point. I think that's entirely fair, but you're right. I mean, yes, of course, any game filled with, a bunch of 18 to 40-year-olds is going to probably be the biggest party in town. It's going to be a lot of fun, and this is sort of a thing that teams need to do, is they need to strike the balance of, okay, we need that good party atmosphere to kind of make it fun. We need to, appease season ticket holders to make sure that they are still happy, which I believe is something this organization has struggled with over the years, if we're being frank.
Yeah, I would agree.
Whether we're talking about because of pricing, not even because of pricing for other sections or anything like that, I just don't know if they've done enough over the years to show season ticket holders how much they actually value them. When you consider, consider like the stuff that, sort of the frivolous stuff you get for being a season ticket holder, there isn't really a ton of it here from what I can gather. And then you also need to find the line of, getting families in the building to build that future generation of fans, which is how you, sort of keep the thing rolling. Because we've talked about this, and I've told you the story before, where I can relate to is, I got into the habit as a kid going to Ottawa Senators games when I cared about hockey, because I would go with my dad in the Coca-Cola family zone, and we'd sit there for $20 each.
Right.
Like, and they weren't the best seats in the house, but we lived in town, so yeah. And we would sit. It's kind of there was a whole section. There was like in the 300 level at the Scotia, what Canadian Tire Center, the hell it's called now, where the three sections are kind of on I believe the away end. Up on the top were the section for the longest time where once a month tickets would go on sale, and this was back before the internet even, basically. So my dad would drive to the rink and would wait in line to buy tickets to these things so we could go to a game every month because it was cheap as hell to do, and why wouldn't you do it? And it got us in the door, and I'd have like a slice of pizza and a pop every game, and my dad, I think, would have basically, he would have something too, and then at least got people in the building and helped build that fan base, which is what you have to do. And I understand... To a degree, I understand trying to appease the season ticket holders about that. But at the same time, if you have a cell phone contract, you're already used to this. This happens all the time. Sorry.
Right.
And you get a pretty good discount for buying season tickets. That's the point.
Right. And part of that, too, is I feel like I'm speaking as the out-of-town fan because...
No, and like I can relate now, like as someone who lives in Regina where there is... I mean, the biggest pro sports team in town, it's my job to cover them, so I don't really go to games as a fan. So when I go to games as a fan, it's somewhere else. Most recently I was at some Jays games. We didn't really splurge too much on that one, but I'm going back again to Toronto in July, and we're talking about like sitting lower bowl of the Skydome because this is the only game for this trip. We might as well do it up rather than just sit up in the 500s, right?
Right, and that's the thing. I know that, and looking at things, and I know the riders have their own family zone, and I know there's discounted tickets up there, but honestly, if I lived in Regina...
like if me, you, and Plaster were going to a football game, we're sitting upper deck midfield.
100% we are. It's a great view. You can watch the whole field breakdown. We're football nerds. We'd love it. We'd have some beers. It'd be a great night.
But if you're a 7-year-old boy, you don't really quite understand the game at that level yet. You get more out of it sitting closer. Maybe you don't because you don't fully understand really everything that's going on, but you get a better taste of different parts of things that you might actually like.
Well, and that is exactly it. So I know they have the fan zone, and if I lived in Regina, like only half the season ticket base does, I'd have no issue taking the kids to the cheap seats. I wouldn't. I would go...
Yeah, because you would go 3-4 times, right?
Right, exactly. And so be it. If they got to leave halfway through because they're not feeling it. I mean, that's what happened my first Rush game. I took Max and Connor just wasn't having it by halftime. Cool. No problem. We left. That's part of it being a parent, and that was fine because, full disclosure, I got comped those tickets because I was on the pregame show. But that was the time I'm like, okay, this is a time to expose them. And even before that, I had thought to myself of maybe doing, taking them, sitting in the nosebleeds and giving that experience, right? Because again, the Rush are local, I can do that. But if me, like so many other members of this crucial out of Regina season ticket base are looking at making an experience, because full disclosure, I go to one game a year, if that, right? So if I want to take my kids to the one game a year, give them the best experience I can so they get this love of football like I have, I want them to have the best experience. And the fact that I'm being priced out of that in Regina, to me, it sucks. That's all. And I know it's being worked on, and I'm glad to hear it's on the radar, and everything they're doing sounds positive.
Yeah.
But it still sucks. At the end of the day, it sucks that if I lived in Winnipeg, or if I lived in Brandon, if I lived in Steinbach or Kenora, I could pay $44 for my two kids. So I'm glad it's on the radar. It's just, it sucks that it's taken this long to get on the radar. This, to me, seems like this more crucial time than ever, coming out of, a missed season and coming out of COVID and restrictions. And I'm finally at a point I feel safe taking my kids places. It seems like a bit of a missed opportunity this season.
Yeah. And I mean, this is not a new phenomenon, like even before, sort of the COVID seasons. We were talking about attendance, was, maybe not to the same degree, but you could see sort of the dip. And I think this just kind of accelerated things, like it did a lot of stuff. So that's the thing. And I mean, it's brought up Rob Van Stone. I believe you've talked about it too, with your source within the team. I mean, and to be fair, of course, that the facility fee is a part of it, right? And that's
1,000,000% it is. Yeah.
And that's certainly a bit of a burden on the team. And that, adds a certain, increase on the ticket prices that is somewhat out of their control, I would say.
Right.
But on the other hand, I would say to that, okay, fair. Yeah, that's an extra $12 or whatever it is per ticket, which is not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And of course, the PST was added onto it as well, which is also, that is completely out of their control, but that is also a thing that happened that's effectively raised all their prices 6% without even any input. Yep. And so that one I get, but the facility fee, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's an expense, and that's something that is, kind of out of your control. But at the same time, it kind of was, to a degree. Like, I don't know exactly how the negotiations went down in terms of building Mosaic Stadium, but, I mean, you could have put up more money to avoid the fee. You could have come up with some kind of different payment structure instead of putting fees on tickets, right?
Right. But that goes back to it. I understand that's part of it, and I get it. So that basically what it means is the cost, the dead cost to get people indoors higher here in Saskatchewan. So maybe they can't offer a $22 ticket like Winnipeg can. Maybe they don't have the space that they don't have some space like Commonwealth does or BC Place does or anything like that. They don't have the space to have like these giant cheapy sections, right? But and I'm not saying that, yeah, hey, I should only pay $2 and some pocket lint to get in the building, but even if, say, my tickets were 100, and the kids were 40, that's an easier pill to swallow. Because you're right, I understand. I'm sure some people don't, and that's fair, and some will have their own opinions on it. But I understand that because of the way the structure of New Mosaic Stadium is set up, that you probably just won't see a $20 lower bowl ticket because of the cost of it all, right?
Yeah,
but you need to see something.
Yeah, and I think sort of the other end of the stick on that is, okay, tickets are what they are, but on the same time, concessions are what they are, and they've gone up. So, if you want families in the door, you got to offer them value somewhere. So is it on tickets or is it on stuff once you get in the building? So if you can't do it on tickets because the facility fee and the PST and a bunch of other things you don't feel you can give as good of a discount there as you would like to, then maybe concessions need to have more of an expanded sort of kids menu where you can get a bunch of stuff for like $2 or something.
Well, and that's it. Like, it's something that the Blades do. The Blades, and I believe the Pats do it too, that they have like a Toonie hot dog night.
Yeah, they have Wiener Wednesday, yeah.
Oh, it's a great name. But like, I even think that somebody responded to me on social media and then didn't quite get my sense of humor about the fact that, yeah, well, the normal price for everything is $36, but I pay $34 for the pack. Like, $2 ain't gonna do it. Like you said, it's if I pay for a cheap ticket, I got no problem paying full pop at the concessions. Vice versa, if I know I can pay full price for a ticket, but feed my kids for a couple bucks, like a Toonie hot dog, a pop, and a bag of chips.
Yeah,
for
like
$6.
we're not talking about putting like the good stuff on the kids menu, but like stuff that's already kind of high margin. You put like the small hot dogs, you put a small pop, you put maybe some popcorn, some cotton candy, all that stuff that essentially costs nothing to produce could easily go on to something like that, and will keep the kids happy for pretty cheap.
Well, and there it is, right? Like it comes down to, like, when I take my kids to games at SaskTel Center, it's full. I'm paying next to nothing to get them in the door, and I get it. It's a lower cost of entry for a Blades game.
Yeah.
But I'm wearing it when I go to the concession, and that's fine. I have to take that into account, right? So, and I get it. And again, with that being said, I know the riders can't just blanket make that call because somebody's got to pay for that, whether it's the vendors, whether it's the riders. Somebody has to pay for that at the end of the day. It's just right now you're kind of damned in both ways. You're paying full pop a concession. You're paying 95% of an adult ticket price. It's just, you're not really winning anywhere, and I think that's going to prohibit families. And even if one of the two you got, I don't think anybody in Saskatchewan would argue. I know lots of teams, and again, Krista's thread pointed out lots of teams do both. I don't know if we can do that here in Saskatchewan, and I would support just one of the two. But again, I'll pay for an expensive ticket if I know I can feed the kids for $10.
Yeah, and I think that's that's one, that's an easier way to do it to keep the season ticket base happier. If they know that the people sitting beside them that brought their family, okay, maybe the kids pay a little less than me, but overall, it's not really that big of a price change compared to what I paid, at least. So that keeps them happy if it's like, okay, now everything else in the building is kind of cheaper. It's sort of like the Mercedes-Benz in Atlanta. That stadium was built with public money, and part of the deal with the public money was, okay, tickets will be what they will be, but everything inside the building is going to be dirt cheap.
Could you imagine, though? Like, I'd be like the Kobayashi of unnamed beer place if there was $2 hot dogs.
Yeah,
like, I would just be there dummying hot dogs.
How many think? Well, it's even better at Jays games on Tuesdays. I believe they're $1 for a hot dog.
What is it? It's 10:30. I might make a hot dog right now. I'm not gonna lie.
Would it be a New York Fries hot dog?
Wouldn't have any lettuce on it. I'll tell you what. I got a golf tournament tomorrow.